So I guess we're looking ahead to this reset on January 1 and then a potential change in relationship between the US and China on January 20. But is it that easy? And I guess what is going to be the key difference here, because it's unlikely we'll probably have leadership by tweeting, so to speak.
Right. Well, I think you're right, Juliet. There's going to be a shift. We can envision that, at least in terms of tone and rhetoric and how leadership messages that come out of Washington, I think you'll see it move back towards sort of conventional messaging and normal diplomatic patterns. But I think the underlying issues, unhappiness on a lot of the trade issues that Trump fixated on, you were just talking about, and I think there's geopolitical issues on South China Sea or Taiwan and so forth, those will move more front and center.
Yeah, of course, the core issues remain, and you've still got a lot of concern as well with other countries' relationships with China too, the likes of Australia, for example. Tell us, though, I think just a little bit more about how you think the tone of Biden will change this, and I guess how you think he's going to try and forge these relationships once he gets there, because he has made it clear America first will be his priority.
Right. Well, look, I think President Trump used communication as a domestic political tool, and he used it very effectively. But that's another way of saying he's not using diplomatic communications to try to induce some kind of outcome from the other party. So he would berate China or publicly castigate them or talk about coronavirus or trade issues. But none of this was done in a way that made it more likely that China would respond to his statements. In fact, if anything, China, given the nature of that political system, it made it more difficult that China would respond, because no leader can take that kind of public abuse, if you will, and respond to it and be viewed as a successful leader. So he sort of painted himself into a corner, I think, with that kind of rhetoric. And it was sort of a lose-lose rhetoric. Biden comes from a more traditional political background where the point of communication is to try to get the other party to move in some sort of way. So you always try to do so in measured terms with a degree of respect. Most of it will take place behind closed doors. It doesn't need to always be public. So at least I think he's taking the right approach. And I would say to my friends in Beijing, this might be a little bit of an opening for Beijing to show a bit of goodwill and maybe try to address some of these issues that's come up in the last few years on trade.
One of the biggest things we've been watching here in Asia has been the impact to the China tech sector on Beijing's antitrust crackdown. Tell us your thoughts on how concerning, I guess, this is more broadly for China tech.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's still early days, but the Chinese government has signaled that they're looking at Alibaba for possible antitrust. And here's why. I think there's several reasons why this might be a matter of concern, but one is, look, the very nature of e-commerce and e-commerce platforms is that it does form a type of natural monopoly. Now, Alibaba does not have a monopoly in China in e-commerce, because JD is very powerful and Pinduoduo is starting e-commerce and Tencent has things, WeChat has channels. So there's all sorts of other channels out there, platforms out there, but Alibaba, Tmall, and Taobao are the largest. So that might warrant some kind of government response. But I'd say it actually brings an efficiency to market. I mean, it's the reason why Amazon's so dominant in its market, because no consumer wants to, if you want to buy a tennis racket tomorrow, Juliet, you don't want to have to go to 5 different platforms and click through. You want to say, I want to go to one major shopping mall, find 100 tennis rackets on that platform, and find the one that's best for me. So it is, you could somewhat say, a natural monopoly. By the way, in terms of full disclosure, I have to tell you that my work in China with Export Now, we do most of our work through Alibaba. So we are partners or clients of them. So I have a high opinion of working with them. We work with JD, we work with other people as well, but most of our activity is through the Tmall and Taobao platforms.
Frank, one other trade deal on the table at the moment, it could be signed this week, is one between the European Union and China. Now, is this essentially underscoring that Europe would like to go it alone now after 4 years of essentially being cast asunder during the Trump administration?
Well, I'll say this, there's a greater sense of autonomy and a greater sense of what you just articulated in Europe than at any time in the modern era. There's no doubt about that. But I'd give you at least 2 caveats though on this point. I'm not sure if the issue on which you want to plant your flag and say, we're going to go in a different direction. I'm not sure if China is the best example of wisdom in that respect. They might want to pick another set of issues. And the second caveat is, my advice to folks in Brussels would be to say, why don't you give Joe Biden a chance? He's going to be in office in a few weeks. And if you're very unhappy with Trump, why don't you wait till the new guy comes in and have some consultations with him before you look to some kind of a rupture or divergence from U.S. policy? And you might find the new team a lot more collegial and a lot easier to work with.
Absolutely, Frank, and that's the reason I was really putting that question to you. So if they do this deal this week, it sends a message to the world, but it also perhaps is a big feather in Xi Jinping's hat.
I think also it's a little bit unfortunate timing for the EU. I mean, I can be sympathetic to that impulse that they need to chart their own course, but I'd say don't do it out of spite. Don't do it just opportunistically, but do it when it's in your own national interest to chart a different path. And I'm not sure this fills that description. And I do think there might be some in Washington who view this as just sort of a gratuitous snub, to say even before the new team came into office, you fellows didn't want to engage in consultation. So my advice to Brussels would be, take your foot off the gas pedal and let that just coast for a few weeks and sit down with the new team and, because I don't think it's helpful in the transatlantic relationship, and I don't think it's helpful in trying to craft some kind of interaction with China that's win-win. I think we're going to want to be in a position where both Washington and Brussels are looking to coordinate their approach to China.